In 1816, a boy named Wassaja, or Beckoning, was born into the Yavapai Indian tribe. This tribe was located in Arizona. The tribe had two main enemies, the U.S. military and the Gila River Pima tribe. At the age of 5, Wassaja was captured by a group of Pima Indians and was sold to a man named Carlos Gentile. Gentile was a photographer and bought Wassaja out of pity. Wassaja was baptized and given the name Carlos Montezuma, which he is now known as today. His parents grieved his loss and turned themselves over to the military, who sent them to a reservation. Carlos's mother tried to escape when she heard Carlos was still alive, but was shot in the back by the military. When a fire burned down Gentile's studio, he was forced to give Carlos to another family that could pay for him.
Carlos was admitted to the University of Illinois, where he studied chemistry. He wrote articles in the school paper about Native American rights. He also joined the debate club. In these two clubs, he took a stand fighting off Native American stereotypes. He was president of his class and was the first Native American to receive a medical degree.
For the next 15 years, more Indians were killed and forced from their land. Carlos Montezuma seemed blind to what was truly happening to his people. In 1879, the government created the first Indian boarding school. Carlos agreed with the school's ideas to civilize Indians. The students at this boarding school were prevented from wearing native clothing, speaking native language, or practicing native religion.
This is a poem written by Carlos Montezuma titled "Changing is Not Vanishing," which enforces these ideas. Who says the Indian race is vanishing? The Indians will not vanish. The feathers, paint, and moccasins will vanish, but the Indians, never. Just as long as there is a drop of human blood in America, the Indians will not vanish. His spirit is everywhere. The American Indian will not vanish. He has changed externally, but he has not vanished. He is an industrial and commercial man competing with the world. He has not vanished. Wherever you see an Indian upholding the standard of his race, there you see the Indian man. He has not vanished. The man part of the Indian is here, there, and everywhere. The Indian race vanishing? No, never. The race will live on and prosper forever.
Job at the Office of Indian Affairs. He was sent to work as a doctor at an Indian boarding school. He would soon discover the reality of the conditions at these establishments. He once said, "Here I saw in full what deterioration a reservation is for the Indians. I watched these Indians cut off from civilized life, trying to become like Yankees with the aid of a few government employees." Montezuma requested more food and medical supplies, but he was ignored. Montezuma was fed up and left for another school. He worked as a doctor and traveled the world with their football team. Montezuma was happier with the conditions of this establishment, but what he had seen never left him.
When the football team went to Arizona, he was welcomed home by his cousins. His cousin took him to a cave where he soon found more than 100 Yavapai were shot to death by the U.S. Army. This caused Montezuma to break down at the sight. At this point, his tolerance of the government and what they were doing reached its bitter end, and he started working against the Bureau and other establishments that stood in his way. In 1903, President Teddy Roosevelt signed an order giving Montezuma's tribe 40 square miles of their native land. Phoenix, Arizona soon grew larger, and a group of developers sought after the land. The government asked the tribe to move onto the Pima Reservation. His tribe appealed to the Office of Indian Affairs. When this didn't work, they turned to Montezuma. Montezuma had experience in this category due to his time with the debate club. Montezuma fought hard and the developers backed down. This showed his tribe that they can resist. Montezuma was an example of what an educated Indian could do.
Based on his knowledge from working for the Office of Indian Affairs, he launched a 3-tiered movement to end what he believed is wrong. The first tier was creating outrage against the reservation conditions. The second was calling for the removal of the Indian Bureau, then advocating for the inclusion of Indians into mainstream American society. Montezuma's anger towards the Office of Indian Affairs was growing even larger. Montezuma created a magazine called Wassaja that stood up to the Office of Indian Affairs. The paper educated the public on the Indians' capabilities and what the Bureau was doing to prevent them from using them. He also used Wassaja to appeal to Indians across the nation to form inter-tribal organization. He wanted to do this so Indians could govern themselves.
Finally, after 10 years of working, he formed the Native American Rights Association. This was the first Native American Rights Association formed by Native Americans. This group provided legal assistance for the Native Americans, which usually involved challenging the Office of Indian Affairs. They also educated the public on the abilities of Native American people. The society was mainly formed to challenge and replace the Office of Indian Affairs. Finally, in 1923, Montezuma diagnosed himself with tuberculosis and knew he was dying. He returned home to his cousins for his final days.
Dr. Carlos Montezuma is one of the main reasons Indian blood is still in America. He fought for the Native American Indians. He barreled into a war with the Indian Bureau or any organization who sat back and watched the Indians go through an endless cycle of poverty. The government made the Indian Bureau to help Native Americans. But what help did they give? They seemed to feel that the Native Americans couldn't fight for themselves and that none of them would break this cycle and help others break through too. They were wrong. Carlos Montezuma broke through the cycle in one of the most unlikely ways and used this to help others. Sure, if he had a choice, he probably would have stayed with his parents. But without him, the Indian community would barely be here at all. If you have any Indian blood, you have Dr. Carlos Montezuma to thank for your freedom and probably your life.
Indian employees in the Indian service are working against the freedom of their race. Truth hurts, but it is never wrong, and in the long run, it conquers. The Indian Bureau is the only obstacle that stands in the way, that hinders our people's freedom. It seems so strange, so incredible, and so unheard of that we Indians must fight and kill the very organ that was organized to free us in order to free ourselves. It is appalling and inexplicable that the Palefaces has taken all of the Indians' property, the continent of America, which was all we had in the world. The Indian asked for public school, college, and university education for his children. To refuse such a noble request would be as cruel to give a stone when he asked for bread. Would the department defray the expenses of any college or university Indian students? The Indian Bureau motto seems to be 8th grade and no more, and therefore we may assume that the Indian Department does not want the Indian educated. It may be wise, and it is afraid that will make too many lawyers who will fight to a finish. It may be that Indian Bureau fears something may happen from the Indians' knowledge of doing something. Carlos Montezuma delivered in his speech, "Let my people go."
Kanda,